Filipino migrants in Italy may soon see a shift in how they live out their faith, as church leaders propose a new paradigm of deeper integration into local parishes. In an interview, Father Greg Gaston said, the new paradigm encourages Filipinos to become active members of local parishes while preserving their traditions through existing chaplaincies. This shift responds to younger generations more at home in Italian culture and language, as well as the need to address priest shortages in the Philippines. Watch our full interview to understand how this shift could reshape migrant ministry and the future of the church abroad. Hello, Father.
Hello.
We're going to talk about the articles that you've released on the integration of the Filipinos in the parishes here in Italy. And Father, what prompted you to propose this shift toward integrating Filipino migrants into local Italian parishes?
Yeah, we have been thinking and discussing about this idea that the Filipinos could maybe contribute a little more to the Italian parishes since we are here and since the 1970s, 80s. So we already have new generations of Filipinos, and I think it's about time that they could really become a little more incorporated, integrated into the local parishes.
How would you describe this new paradigm in practical terms for Filipino communities here in Italy?
We've been discussing this among our Filipino chaplains here in Italy, and of course, their default mode is to be with the Filipinos the whole time, okay?
Yes.
But even they are also convinced that little by little, at least those who are prepared, not everyone, not all the Filipinos have to be instantly active in the local parishes.
Yes.
Of course, it's still different. Even people in the US, for example, who have been there for a long time, and they are parts of the pastoral councils of the dioceses, of the parishes, they still tell us, Father, iba talaga kung may makausap na Filipino na pari. Okay, so we recognize all this, but we also recognize that many of them can indeed do a lot in the local parishes.
What specific changes can Filipino migrants expect if this model is implemented?
Actually, this has already been implemented, maybe not officially, not formally, but we know that in many parishes here in Italy, the Filipinos have also been active already. Maybe their families, maybe younger ones, because they have their kids who know Italian but not Filipino this time.
Yes.
So little by little, they have to be there. So it's not really implementation from above in the sense of maybe a decree or something, but it's a way of life. Little by little, Filipinos being incorporated, integrated into the local Italian parishes.
There are some who are maybe asking how will this affect our identity, so our integration versus identity. Yes. How do you respond to concerns that deeper integration might weaken Filipino Catholic identity and traditions?
First of all, the Filipino communities will have to continue because many Filipinos will still be coming into Italy and maybe as a first step, well, if they feel comfortable going directly into the parishes, why not? But many of them maybe will look for a Filipino mass, Filipino songs, traditions, pansit, etc. So yes, we welcome them into the Filipino communities. But those who are ready, we can already guide them into the Italian parishes, knowing that we do not only receive care, but we can also contribute something to the Italian parishes. This does not mean that the Filipino identity will be lost completely. In fact, if you go to other countries in the US, they have Filipino fiestas. They have San Lorenzo, they have the Blessed Virgin Mary, they have Santo Niño, they have Nazareno, they have all these fiestas, but they have become incorporated into the US parish life. So the Filipino feasts become part of the US parishes activities. So it's no longer only Filipinos attending the Santo Niño. So imagine later on, even Italians will be attending the Santo Niño. So it's a beautiful contribution of our identity, which does not disappear, but becomes part of the local church as well.
Sharing our identity and traditions with them, yes.
Exactly.
Father, what safeguards are in place to preserve Filipino community life while encouraging parish integration? Like what you said a while ago, it's sharing. But what do you think can safeguard this identity?
Yes, of course we should not suddenly give up our Filipino culture, our Filipino language, identity. At the same time, maybe we could look at this from the perspective of mission. Okay, so if we celebrated 2021, 500 years of Christianity, the theme was gifted. So, and we continue to be gifted, but also to give, gifted to give. So in this case, if we remain at the Filipino community level, okay, we can grow as Catholics, but always within the Filipino setting. This time we also need to give, to share with others this spiritual life. So maybe from this perspective, we are not worried about losing our Filipino identity, because that is precisely what we are also going to share with other people. So it's not simply close the Filipino communities, all go to become Italians. No, we contribute. That way we have this responsibility to preserve as well our Filipino identity, to be able to share that with others.
Gifted to gift, yes. Can you clarify how this model differs from simply phasing out Filipino chaplaincies?
Yes. If we phase out the Filipino chaplaincies, then we also remove all the chaplains, we remove everything. So the Filipinos will have, imagine, theoretically, they have to immediately go to the Italian parishes. So maybe if there are Filipinos active in those parishes, yes, they could be the ones to welcome. And this could actually be a model in some places where there are no Filipino communities. So we don't even have to remove the Italian chaplaincies, they remain there. But note that there are many cities in Italy without Filipino chaplains. Okay, so far-flung areas, not in the major cities like Milan, Rome, Florence. So many other places in Italy without the Filipino chaplains. And this is the model actually that can be used. So Filipinos active in the parishes welcoming other Filipinos. Because it is impossible to have Filipino chaplains in all the places where there are Filipinos.
Yes. On clergy and sustainability, Father, you've mentioned also the strain on Filipino clergy.
Yes.
How will this proposal affect the deployment of Filipino chaplains abroad?
Sometimes we tend to think that we have so many vocations in the Philippines, which is not true. Sometimes we think that the Filipinos, they all go to Mass. Not really. Our churches are full because our parishes are big. So we have parishes with 30,000 people, 50,000, 100,000 with 1 or 2 priests. Here in Italy, they could have parishes, maybe 2,000 people, 1,000. 5,000 is big. And in fact, there are dioceses, at least in the past, and they have been merged with 10,000 people. And that's only one chapel in the Philippines. And in Italy, it's a diocese, imagine. So, and they have so many priests here in proportion to the number of people. So actually, we could say that in the Philippines, we really need more priests. And if we supply all the requesting dioceses in Italy with priests, with Filipino chaplains, then we could end up maybe with 50, 70 Filipino priests in Italy. So imagine, that means removed from the Philippine dioceses. And then you have all these other European countries, Eastern European countries, looking for Filipino chaplains. We cannot really supply all of this with Filipino priests. So the solution is going back to what actually is, even in the Code of Canon Law, who is the principal in charge of migrants, the local bishop, the local parishes. So Filipino migrants in Italy, who is in charge of them? The Italian bishops, not the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, not the Philippine bishops. So the Filipino priests will simply assist the Italian bishops in taking care of the Filipino migrants here. So in terms of number of priests, we have the Italian priests who could very well take care of the Filipinos as well.
Could this model be applied to other countries with large Filipino migrant populations, Father?
Yes, exactly. This model is actually what we're trying to, wild imaginations, maybe could be the possible model in Eastern Europe, for example, where the Filipinos are coming because companies have been opening opening shop in Eastern Europe because of maybe lower wages, especially. So they would hire Filipinos in the homes, yes, but also in the factories, in the ports, in the hotels, the resorts. So Filipinos start coming in to Eastern Europe, and they are also asking for Filipino chaplains. But at least maybe we could visit them once a month, but the other Sundays could be masses in English, celebrated by a local priest, Eastern European priest, but maybe the masses could be organized by the Filipinos, but those masses are not, strictly speaking, only Filipino masses in English and open for other nationalities.
What are the biggest obstacles to making this transition work?
Maybe it's all a matter of mentality. So among us priests, among us Filipino priests, Filipino lay people, but also the Italian parish priests and the Italian parishioners, because sometimes we could tend to, of course, it's more comfortable, our comfort zone always to be with Filipinos. And the same thing happens with the Italians, maybe comfort zone among the Italians. And the Italian priests, for example, when the Italians migrated to the US, to Germany, to Switzerland, Canada, they immediately, in the early 1900s, they immediately set up Italian parishes. And the same thing happened with the Polish parishes, French parishes, Irish parishes, German parishes, independent from the local churches, local parishes of the US, of Germany, of Switzerland. But I think this is not the model for Filipinos. No? For Filipinos, we could become more incorporated, integrated into the local parishes. So maybe that's why I'm also trying to work it out with the Italian parish priests. So hopefully they could invite the Filipinos. Because I always tell them that we Filipinos, we are ashamed, we are shy. So we will not really go to the Italian priests and volunteer our participation. So I'm trying to convince the Italian parish priests to kindly invite the Filipinos. And once I think this would be a good, beautiful discovery of the Italian parish priests. Eventually, when they see the Filipinos active in the Italian parishes, well, this would be a big help also for their parishes.
You mentioned a while ago the giftedness of Filipinos to the Catholic Church on a long-term vision. How do you see Filipino migrants contributing to the broader mission of the Church in Italy?
So imagine if the Filipinos were very active in the Italian parishes, so they could help in all the different activities, of course, the usual daily masses, Sunday masses, catechesis, confirmation, baptisms, marriage preparation. And not only that, I'll mention an example when I went to Torino in Turin, and I was explaining this to the Filipinos. Congratulations, 25 years we have been together, and maybe our next step could be to help the local parishes be active in the local parishes. After lunch, a leader from the Latin Americans, a lady leader, she approached me and told me, yes, Father, that's true, because my son, he goes to an Italian parish and he was able to bring back his Italian friend to Mass. Now his Italian friend comes to Mass every Sunday, and also the parents of his Italian friend. And then one day, my son came to the Latin American community, and the Latin American priest told him, oh, you're also a Latin American, don't forget your roots, your traditions, so you should be active in this Latin American community. And the mother told the priest, Padrecito, Padre, no. I, the mother, I belong here in the Latin American community. But my son, he doesn't belong here. He belongs to the Italian parish. That's what she said. So, of course, he may visit, but basically he's there in the Italian parish, and that is his field of mission. And that is also gifted to give.
Evangelization also, yes. So what does this shift mean for the global church's approach to migration and pastoral care?
Yeah. I would say that this is a shift, not in the sense of removing something and shifting to something new, but sort of a continuation. We have taken care of our Filipinos. Okay, we continue to take care of our Filipinos. So it's a continuation, and then maybe it's a sort of an embarking into a new stage. yes, maintaining the old stage, but beginning a new field of mission. In this case, sending our Filipinos to mission, wherever we are. Cardinal Ambo David would remind us that yes, in the past, evangelization was done by the monks, for example, in the maybe 700s, 800s, and then eventually the monasteries. You know these cities here in Europe, when you hear the word Minster, for example, Westminster or Munster, or these are actually monasteries.
Yes.
Then the monks began, and then eventually civilization, because they were planting, they were even coming up with liquors, and then the animals, all these things, and eventually hospitals, schools, universities, spearheaded by monks, and then later on also by priests and by the religious in the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, and even later. But if you go earlier, the early Christians, who were the ones who brought the gospel message all over the world, it was the lay people.
Yes.
And the lay people, the normal lay people, family members, merchants, slaves, the officers in the army, agriculture, etc. These were the people. And the same thing, I think, is our model for the Filipinos. We don't have to depend totally on the priests and the religious, but the lay people, you are the ones who can really bring the gospel message to the whole world.